Not all days are good ones. This is just a fact of life. What can anyone do about it? Sure, you could go to the nearest store and pick up some snacks to feel better. Such a habit is bad, of course, but the leftover feelings from a lousy day are no better. So here you are in a familiar store buying your favorite goodies. Then it suddenly becomes darker, as if the brightness of a screen has been turned down. A strange noise and crackling sound is heard. Then a drop falls on your head. What on earth is going on? You look up, and your skin goes cold. You see water pour from cracks in the ceiling. You need to call someone, but there is not a soul in sight. Water flows across the floor and begins to rise rapidly. You need to get out of here as soon as possible and call emergency services. You go outside and see a tsunami coming. A huge wave is carrying away debris, cars, people, and animals. Your first thought, where did the tsunami even come from? And the second thought, I'm done for. The wave crashes and you wake up in your bed. Yes, it was only a dream and you're safe, but your heart is pounding with horror. The likelihood that the store closest to you would succumb to a tsunami is extremely small, even if you live on the coast. Even less likely that you've ever seen such a giant wave in your life. But still, kudos to the Lumiere brothers. Now everything can be seen in the movies. Knowing what a giant wave looks like does not explain why it appeared in a dream. Does it make any sense? This is one of the eternal questions that has plagued mankind. Not specifically about that of the tsunami, of course, but concerning the interpretation of dreams in general. So what does drowning in a dream really mean? The weather and the violence of the elements in this case are a symbol of emotions. The sleeper knows that a hurricane or a giant wave destroys everything in its path, and it's impossible to stop them. Therefore, the tsunami marks the inevitable changes in human life. If in a dream you survived after a natural disaster, then you are ready to cope with adversity in real life. In any case, this is how you can decipher the described dream, based on the works of the legendary psychologist Sigmund Freud. It was he who openly declared that dreams are symbols that the unconscious sends to us. They speak of inner desires, fears, and urges that a person suppresses. The same concept was also investigated by a no less famous scientist called Carl Jung. And although these psychologists were late for several thousand years with their conclusions, the fact that a dream is a note encrypted in a metaphor had been guessed at before way back in antiquity. In the scriptures, there are stories about how God sent dreams to the saints or appeared in them. The oldest surviving dream book was found in Egypt. It was created around 2000 BC. No wonder Freud's book on the interpretation of dreams had become very popular. His work says that in these nightly visions you need to pay attention to the symbolism. Encrypted messages from the subconscious are hidden in metaphors. Very few people actually experience drowning, which is absolutely wonderful. But it turns out that a dream with such a plot is a fairly common occurrence. Its symbolism lies on the surface. It's enough to remember what words and phrases we use in various life situations. For example, I dove straight into work head first. A wave of despair swept over me. Or I am drowning in all this work. It turns out that the metaphors with water and drowning are well known to us, but in everyday speech we don't really pay that much attention to them. Another peculiar thing is when we dream of the same thing in all kinds of colors. The meaning of dreams and the symbols in them are constantly being explored. It is not known how this was done in ancient Egypt, but in our modern time there are now qualified experts on dreams, such as Delphi Ellis. She also says that the subconscious utilizes metaphors to show real events in the sleeping person's life. If a person feels that he is drowning in household chores or is too immersed in some process at work, he may end up going underwater in the literal sense of the word while dreaming. Think about struggling with waves out at sea, or how you felt after running a lot. There is this feeling that you can't seem to catch your breath. Our brain connects diving into choppy seas with running due to the fact that in both cases, we do not have enough air in our bodies. In life, people just as actively engage with different tasks as they might with waves, or rush around in a figurative sense of the word. If you rush through life in such a way that there is no time to rest, the brain could then use the water metaphor. Such a decoding of dreams may seem too simple, but there are nuances throughout it all. You can drown in the sea, or a river, or you can drown in a pool or a bathtub, or in a puddle, or even in chocolate. Does it really matter? Dream analyst Laura Lowenberg says it does. For most people, chocolate is regarded as a delicious dessert, but someone may have a terrible allergy to it. So there is some context that can adjust the same metaphor to each specific person. In dreams, every detail is important, much like a puzzle. If you skip just one section, the picture may end up distorted. Thus, the ocean and the sea can symbolize unknown or dangerous territory. The bath, on the other hand, symbolizes purity and solitude. If you suddenly have a dream in which you are drowning, think about the purity of your thoughts. Some bad deed has perhaps made you feel dirty. The size of the reservoir, your personal attitude towards the place where it is located, the purity of the water. Everything in a dream can make some sort of sense. Again, it's not just in water that people can drown. Immersion in the same chocolate symbolizes either enjoyment of real life or vice versa. The desire to fulfill some secret desire. Amongst sweets, some have dreamed that they drowned in milk. This metaphor is sometimes deciphered as follows. You do so many useful things that you yourself do not have time to appreciate it. If you do not focus on a few truly important things, there's the risk of drowning in all the surrounding worries. Among the less pleasant but more common sleep scenarios is drowning in blood. Such an ominous picture actually signifies a strong wound. While it can be physical, it is most often the emotional side that is implied here. Mental anguish can, in a dream, turn to blood. There is another side to this coin. The subconscious is able to send such a bloodbath not only if it hurts you, but also if you hurt someone. This leads to another important aspect regarding the interpretation of dreams: the emotions. After all, you can drown in panic, or you can get a surfboard and ride the tsunami, or discover that you are able to breathe underwater, or even that the blood is actually strawberry juice. Surely one of you has dreamed of such a thing before. How then to understand the message encrypted in a dream? Experts recommend remembering your feelings, listening to them, and looking for similar ones in your life. For example, they began to breathe underwater. It means that they coped with an impossible task at first glance. It's likely that you have some kind of task that seems unsolvable, but in the dream, the subconscious makes it clear that you actually have enough strength to cope with it. If you panic in a dream, think about what makes you feel this way in life, or what makes you feel like you don't have enough time. What events knock you off your feet? You get the picture. The same can be done with dreams in which you see a drowning person. If you dream of a drowning dog, pay attention to your relationship with your friends. If you cannot save a drowning person, then you'll feel powerless in life. If you don't want to save them, then perhaps something unneeded in life is leaving you. But what if you drown someone? Calm down. This does not mean that you are a potential murderer. Perhaps contact with this person hurts you, or you suppress your emotions towards them, or maybe vice versa. This symbolic drowning means liberation and readiness to move on. It all depends on the context, at least according to Freud and Jung. There is another theory behind the meaning of dreams, which includes a bit about drowning. Such a dream may be just a rehearsal. It seems that some animals also dream, both for them and for us. This plays the role of an ancient built-in simulator. The brain understands that there is some threat. Drowning, for example. You have no idea what you'll do if you get into such a situation. Also, the brain knows that you're afraid of the prospect of such a situation, and that fear drives the body into a stupor, and it stops following commands. How can one determine the appropriate courses of action without exposing the body to actual danger? Create a simulation. And now here you are actually drowning in a dream, and in the meantime the brain is collecting the necessary data. Sure, there'll be problems with panicking and trying to breathe. Duly noted. We often do this, and what's more, we do so consciously. We play out possible courses of actions for various events. Not always with drowning, of course. Think about it. This ability makes it possible to prepare at least a little for some negative scenarios in real life. But there is still the possibility that all these explanations are in fact wrong, including the positions of Jung and Freud. Recent studies have increasingly supported the activation synthesis hypothesis. It's based on the idea that dreams have no meaning or symbolism. These are random images from our memory that are randomly activated due to electrical impulses in the brain. But how could that be? After all, you can point out exact parallels between sleep and real life. That's exactly the point. People attach meaning on their own to disparate images after waking up. We tend to look for meaning in everything and see associations. According to this hypothesis, dreams are not a coded message, but instead use of our memories. Experiments on students sleeping in lab conditions have documented this connection. During light sleep, the neurons in the brain produce mostly theta waves, predominantly in the frontal lobe of the brain. It turns out that the same thing happens when a waking person recalls situations from his life. In other words, he draws memories from memory. Here we have some random images for the dreams, but that's not all. Recent studies have also shown that dreams are still associated with emotions. They activate similar parts of the brain. Waking up, we realize that what we saw was not real, but the emotions after sleep are still completely real. It turns out that dreams are equally connected with both memories and emotions. You've probably heard that during sleep, the brain reprocesses all the information received during the day. It sifts through and sorts it all. Something goes to the trash, per se, while something else goes to long-term memory. But at the same time, you have to deal with all the emotions, and this is a completely different issue. Therefore, the brain separates emotions from experiences. And while memories can be put on a virtual shelf in memory, this would be a bad idea for emotions. They must be confronted so as to plunge oneself into panic and anxiety. This is what happens in a dream. There's the release of emotions. So what happens after all then? Were Freud and Jung right? Do the images that appear to us at night mean something? The answer to this question is actually still being looked into. The human brain is so complex that scientists may never be able to fully understand it. What point of view do you tend to lean towards? Do our dreams really matter, or are they just random images from our brains?